This podcast is brought to you by North Carolina's electric cooperatives.
This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Thank you for tuning in this week's NC Spin. Well, this week's news cycle had some strange twists, and NC Spin's on top of them. We start by announcing some news about the future of our program, but we quickly plunge into the decision by a three-judge panel to use congressional districts drawn by legislators last month. This week was also the opening for filing to run for 2020 elections, and there were some interesting surprises to report. But perhaps the most bizarre development surrounded the resolution to the Silent Sam controversy, and of course, we're going to talk about that and ask the panel to tell us something we don't know. Speaking about the panel this week, they include Rick Henderson, editor-in-chief of the Carolina Journal, Bob Orr, former Supreme Court Justice, Rob Schofield, director of NC Policy Watch, and Chris Fitzsimon, director of the Newsroom. We'll begin our uninterrupted debate after these brief messages from our underwriters.
They're up before dawn and work late into the night. They believe in hard work, family, and doing the right thing. They stand up for their communities when others walk away. They're good people who just want a fair shake. They are farmers. At North Carolina Farm Bureau, we are proud to stand with our farmers.
Today's tools make you a real DIYer, and as a member of an electric cooperative, you have lots of valuable tools to help you do it yourself in controlling your home energy use and budget, leaving you free to be Dad.
Production underwriting provided by the North Carolina Academy of Family Physicians. Family Physicians, your trusted healthcare advisor for life.
We've got some great news about the future of NC Spin. We're delighted to announce that UNC-TV has renewed our contract for NC Spin for the coming year. This means our great panel of analysts will continue to comment on the week's top Carolina issues, especially the significant 2020 elections. We especially want to thank Lindsey Bierman, the new general manager of UNC-TV, for his strong leadership and his commitment for balanced discussion on public policy issues. And we also want to thank each of you who wrote, emailed, texted, or posted somehow or another in support for our continuation. And most especially, we want to thank the North Carolina Farm Bureau, the Academy of Family Physicians, and the NC Electric membership cooperatives for their unwavering support that make our broadcast possible. And hope you'll tell them that you appreciate that support. Now, our pledge is to deliver another year of balanced debate for the Old North State, so let's get started on it. Following years of lawsuits claiming that our state's congressional districts were unconstitutional, a panel of 3 Superior Court judges declared in late October they must be redrawn. This set off a chain of events questioning whether new districts could be drawn and approved in time for the primary election starting in March. Super Tuesday. Now, this past week, the same 3 judges declared that those new maps were approved for next year's election. Bob Orr, this decision received less than enthusiastic response from just about everybody. The judges said they decided to go with the new districts primarily because they said there wasn't enough time to give them a thorough review and allow the candidates to start filing this week. What's your judgment about this decision?
I think the judges were right on the money. They were given a stacked deck in the sense that the lawsuit was filed very late in the year. They granted the preliminary injunction and said the 2016 maps couldn't be used. The legislature acted quickly and openly. They didn't draw perfect districts, but I think they solved at least sufficiently the issues that were in the 2016 maps. And I think the panel understood they couldn't have a week, 2-week trial and still get people into the election
but Rob,
cycle.
The State Board of Elections had given them until December 15th.
Right.
And they pulled the trigger, what was it, December 3rd?
Right. I mean, Bob's right. It would have been tough to have a full-blown trial. I'm still not convinced, however, that it would have been the end of the world if this had to been delayed past March for the congressional primary. I mean, the end result is we're going to have another rigged election. We've got rigged maps that are drawn clearly for partisan purpose. There's no doubt that that's really what this is. This is a 50-50 state that leans Democratic, at least in registration, and we're going to have already an 8-5 guaranteed Republican majority.
Rick, to me, it begs the question, why did they make them go through this whole rigmarole to start off with if they were going to just approve whatever it was they came up with?
Well, they did invalidate the 2016 maps, and they said that those were not going to be used, and so they had to come up with a new set of maps. And secondly, I mean, as Bob said, the lawsuit was filed by a group led by former Attorney General Eric Holder, a Democratic group. Judge Paul Ridgway, who read the opinion for the court, said, you guys could have filed back in June if you wanted to, but you waited until September. And so by waiting so long, the court didn't have time to actually look at the factual dispute.
This wasn't the first lawsuit on these congressional districts.
This was the one that was at play right here. And the other thing about this, too, is that to Rob's point about delaying the primary, you have to remember, we did this in 2016. We had two primaries, if you will, for Congress. The first one, 2.5 million people voted, and the second one, less than 500,000 people voted. So you're disenfranchising an awful lot of people if you have a primary at a time when nobody's likely to vote.
So, Chris, most people, I mean, we've had a 10-3 Republican to Democrat spread in our congressional delegation. Most people are saying that they think this is going to end up being 8-5. Is that more representative of North Carolina?
Well, I think Rob is right. The state is, I think the best argument you can make for Republicans is that we're evenly divided, not that they should be all but guaranteed a 3-seat majority. I'm sort of conflicted about this. I understand the worry, I understand the thing about turnout, but the idea is to have fair elections and give candidates a fair chance. And this isn't the general election. This would be a primary election where primary voters are more likely to turn out. So I was a little surprised, although on the other side of it, I'm fascinated by all the folks who were condemning this horrible judicial activism by the courts and now are silent about this opinion by the courts. It's also worth noting this panel was bipartisan, so when they threw out the districts early on, they were attacked. And this, there was a Republican member of this
Bob,
panel.
we've had these decisions since Fido was a pup. I mean, we don't have enough time to do anything about this prior to the upcoming elections, so we're just going to let the current districts stand.
Well, they're not letting the current districts stand.
That.
They were redrawn.
Well, essentially, that's
and
what they did.
I disagree with this, that it's a done deal, that it's 8-5. If the whole concept of fair redistricting is that you get good candidates from both parties, they're well-financed, and, there are factors that will play into whether a Democrat wins or a Republican. But I think right now we're going to see a lot of very competitive congressional races, which is what we want to see.
Well, as a matter of fact, toward the end of the week, in fact on Friday, we got an announcement that Congressman George Holding was not going to. He had originally said he was not going to challenge an incumbent. I suspect that meant an incumbent Republican judge. Right. But at any rate, he was not going to, Congressman. But on Friday, he said, I'm just not running.
Well, we're increasingly seeing, of course, that urban areas are Democratic, rural areas are voting Republican. He's in Raleigh, he's in Wake County. It's an urban area. It's going Democratic. I think that we should have a situation. I agree with Bob. We should have truly competitive races. That should be the goal. It's hard to draw those in a state in which we've sort of self-segregated geographically so much, but.
And we do have to adhere to the Voting Rights Act.
Right, but we clearly are not. I don't think we're going to have very many competitive races. There might be one or two amongst the 13, but we pretty much already know what the outcome is going to be, at least with respect to partisans.
And so looking at Holding's district, Deborah Ross came out of the gate pretty early on, and she's running for that seat. Is she going to be considered sort of a front runner?
Well, absolutely.
She has run for U.S. Senate before. She's been in the legislature.
She lives in Raleigh. She lives in the heart of the district. I think she's absolutely the front runner, and it's not an accident that she filed so quickly. Yeah. I think a lot of other Democrats especially would be reluctant to challenge her given her name recognition, the ability she showed the last time she ran for the statewide office to raise money, her connections in Raleigh and the Democratic Party. I mean, this is her seat to lose.
Yeah. Now, as of Friday, I went through and I looked at all of the filings. There were a number of the congressional delegation, even some incumbents who had not filed yet. But are any expectations, Rick, so far as any challenges or any surprise announcements that we're expecting?
We don't know what Mark Walker's going to do yet. He's the 6th district representative, and the way that
his district has been drawn to be more Democratic.
Yeah, it's been drawn to be, I think, sort of the core triad district. I think it's a very sensible district in a lot of ways because Greensboro and Winston-Salem are both in the district. All of Guilford County is in the districts. But that's not a good district necessarily for Mark Walker, who more represented the more northern rural counties. So he has not decided what he's going to do yet. He may sit out entirely. He could conceivably jump in and challenge Tom Tillis for the Senate seat. Or he may run for something else. We just don't know.
Or maybe Burr in 22, Burr's seat.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Well, Monday was the official date that candidates could begin to file to run in the 2020 elections. North Carolina decided to become part of the Super Tuesday presidential beauty contest so we could have more of a voice in selecting the presidential nominees. Chris Cooper, Western Carolina University's political scientist, who's been on our show before, said that people will be taking down their Christmas decorations simultaneously with the political season heating up. In the first week of filing, we've had some interesting developments. Rob Schofield, the big news came from Garland Tucker, who announced he was ending his challenge of first-term Senator Tom Tillis. Tucker had spent an estimated $1 million of his own money, and he was considered to be a pretty competitive challenger. What caused him to drop out?
I don't think Tucker got to be a very wealthy man by throwing his money away. I think he probably realized that, Tillis has...
Well, that horse had left the barn, hadn't
well,
I mean, he spent $1 million.
He throw good money after bad money after good. Yeah. Tillis has done everything he can to be sort of an obsequious Trump toady on every single issue, and I think
don't beat around the bush about that.
I think that's what Tucker, you could say mission accomplished for Tucker. He was trying to run at him from the right. He's clearly pushed Tillis to the right, where he's completely attached himself at the hip to the president. I think he must. The realistic assessment would be that he looked at the polls and he just doesn't see a path to victory.
There's been a lot of speculation that Tom Tillis was vulnerable. The most vulnerable time for somebody in public office is running for re-election their first term. And this would be him running in his first re-election campaign. Is that still true? That's why Garland got into this race to start off with.
Oh, I think absolutely. I think there's a history of one-term senators in North Carolina being defeated. I think Senator Tillis, in the greater scheme of things, isn't as well known as, say, a Richard Burr is. He's certainly made some mistakes in the context of flip-flopping and then jumping into bed with
President Trump.
Yeah,
who he claims,
I mean, he's all in on Trump, so he better hope Trump's as successful in North Carolina.
There was a period of time when he wasn't, because he stood up to Trump
and
then got his marching orders and decided that he would become a Trump supported candidate, and the presidents endorsed him.
Yes, that's right. And the thing about the Tucker decision as well is I think that Tom Tillis is a fairly effective retail politician, and I think that the first time you attempted to see Garland Tucker show up at a barbecue or some sort of event like that, it wouldn't have gone very well.
I think it's worth pointing out the vulnerability that Tillis has in the national scene is in the general election. Right. He's one of the least popular Republican incumbent senators running for re-election.
Well, let's talk about that, because he's got a number of people who've already filed in this campaign, most notably Cal Cunningham, a former state senator, and Senator Erica Smith from the northeastern part of North Carolina. And then there are several others, Trevor Fuller from Mecklenburg, a commissioner, Stephen Williams from Durham, Atul Gold from Raleigh. Cunningham's already raised a lot of money. He's out of the gate.
If it's based upon the number of emails that he sends out, he is doing very well, because I must get 10 a day from him. I'm
also
sure
the choice of the national sort of Democratic machine has sort of knighted him as their chosen candidate. Doesn't mean he's going to win the primary, but I think that makes him the favorite, although Senator Smith certainly has a constituency. I don't think this will be an easy win.
Yeah, I think that's the issue, too, is that Senator Smith has been very vocal about the fact that she hasn't even been given a chance to get any support from the national groups, and she will be a very dynamic candidate, and I've yet to figure out if Cal Cunningham will be or not, because he's been sort of the perennial ballot filler in a lot of ways.
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say, though, Cal Cunningham fits the demographic that I would think the National Democrat Party wants to run for a U.S. Senate seat in North Carolina. He's military background. He's a smart, articulate young man. Is he a dynamo? Probably not. Tom Tillis isn't a dynamo. So it's a pretty
and
interesting
they have
matchup.
the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee has already promised that they're just going to open up the floodgates and pour money.
And the president will as well. I mean, we are going to just be inundated for the next year with just
Emails.
emails. I already got that.
And
Lots of television
But
ads. Lots of TV ads.
during this week, we had a really bizarre story, I thought, that came out of the state Republican Party. Typically, the parties are asked to submit to the State Board of Elections those names of candidates who are going to be on the ballot in the presidential primary election. Now, even though former Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld and Representative Joe Walsh are actively running against President Trump, the Democratic Party in North Carolina Republican Party, okay. The Republican Party said, nope, we're just going to put one name on the ballot. There are some people who are saying this just reestablishes the fact that the Republican Party has become very cult-like. Agree or disagree?
Wow, I wonder who would say something like that.
Well, it is.
But I mean, to the point, it is, I think, very frustrating for an awful lot of conservative voters who are either Republican or unaffiliated and leaning Republican, that they're not going to have an opportunity to vote for somebody else for president, at least not on that ballot. They'll have to write in or something like that to do that. And I think it's I think it's a sign of insecurity from the state Republican Party.
I've been a registered Republican for 45 years, and yes, it has become a Trump cult. And it is disheartening to people like me who have tried to build a viable two-party system for the state based on good government and responsible conservative principles to see this kind of garbage take place. I mean, it's just unconscionable to try and protect Trump from a primary challenge.
Well, South Carolina wouldn't even allow a primary for the presidential. They're not even going to have a presidential primary there because they won't.
Well, we're not either, in fact.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But John Hood's the person who's called President Trump a contemptible human being, and I mean, I think that's if you've got millions of people supporting a contemptible human being, you could call that a cult.
Okay, so we've got filings that have taken place, and obviously, as we get closer to the primary, we're going to go through all of those, and we'll be talking about them. We've got a governor's race, lieutenant governors. The lieutenant governor, Dan Forrest, is going to be running for governor, so it leaves the lieutenant governor's slot open, and boy, have they already started filing in. We've got 5 Democrats that have filed, including Senator Terry Van Dyne from up in the western part of the state, Representative Yvonne Lewis Holley from in the Raleigh area. The Republicans are also jumping into this. Mark Johnson, who's the state superintendent of public, that was interesting to me. Why is he leaving a job that he's got now?
He's got more iPads to give away, apparently.
Well, it's really tough to beat a sitting council of state member.
It is.
It's very, very difficult to do that. And so that was a surprise to me, is why he decided to jump into that.
Superintendent of Public Instruction is a really hard job if you're doing it correctly. Wow. I would contend, in all due respect to lieutenant governors, that may be the cushiest job in state government.
Although I think Senator Van Dyne made a mistake when she said that the job of the lieutenant governor is to echo and amplify the message of the governor, because I think Dan Forrest would have something to say about that in his relationship with Roy Cooper.
So we've got some vacancies here: superintendent of public instruction, lieutenant governor. These are going to be some interesting races. One that I found fairly interesting was the Commissioner of Insurance, Mike Causey, who won that in 2016, is going to be challenged by the man he beat, the former insurance commissioner, Wayne Goodwin. That should be interesting to watch.
A lot of people thought that Causey winning and Mark Johnson winning in 2016, they were clearly on Trump's coattails. It was almost like they didn't even expect to win themselves. It was almost like an accidental victory. Causey, to his credit, played a role in bringing down Robin Hayes.
Senate.
Wayne Goodwin's involved in this, though.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
we have several people who are going to be on the ballot.
And Mark Walker, sort of the unnamed person in the indictment.
It's an interesting situation dynamic that you've got Wayne Goodwin running against Mike Causey in this race.
Can I ask a question, though? Not my role, but is Wayne Goodman going to step down.
yeah.
Goodwin stepped down as chair of the state party.
I think
'cause
he
it
would
seems
have
to me
to.
that would
Well,
have
he
been
hasn't
okay.
filed
Yeah,
yet, and
yeah.
I think that's
I think
probably
he has,
one
he has
reason.
announced his intention.
We had
I
a
think, to
couple
step
of we
aside.
had a couple of leaders in the legislature. Harry Brown from Jacksonville, who is Senate Majority Leader, and also Rick Horner, who is the education guru over in the Senate. Both of them announced they're not running. Any particular reason?
With Horner, I think he said that his district has changed 3 times in 3 years, and so he's not really sure that the people he would represent know who he is. That's a big loss because he is certainly a solid education policy guy, and that's a big loss, I think, in a lot of ways for good policy. The issue more with Harry Brown, as he said, the sessions are too long. He runs family businesses. He can't stay and run his business if the legislature's in
I
session
think
all the time.
you're starting to hear that a lot. The irony of that to me is the Republicans are in charge of the session.
Right.
I mean, they're
Brown's the
they're the
majority
ones,
leader.
right? They're the ones that keep calling themselves back, that have these long sessions that go on and on and on. I mean, you can blame a little bit of that on veto overrides, but for the most part, they've changed the legislative calendar dramatically, and now we're complaining about it.
In the last few years. Let's switch gears. The day before Thanksgiving, the UNC Board of Governors announced it had finally resolved the Silent Sam controversy. They'll donate the statue, erected in 1913 to honor Confederate soldiers who died in the Civil War. The monument will be donated to the Sons of Confederate Veterans, along with $2.5 million in non-university funds. And in exchange, that group pledges they won't relocate outside, or they will relocate outside any of the 14 counties that have UNC campuses. Rick, this story turned really bizarre when your Carolina Journal and other news outlets revealed that 1 hour before the Board of Governors met to approve the deal, the Sons of Confederate Veterans filed a lawsuit suing UNC to get the monument. Help us understand what's really going on there.
You can't know the players without a program in this particular case. The story that I worked on with my colleague Lindsay Marcello was basically that the timeline was bizarre. The 22nd of November, you had Randy Ramsey, the new chairman of the Board of Governors, sign off on this agreement. The 23rd, the Sons of Confederate Veterans took possession of the statue. So Ramsey signed an agreement before the Sons of Confederate Veterans.
Well, they had not had possession of the statue beforehand.
United Daughters of the Confederacy had the statue erected.
So how did they end up with it?
Good question, but it happened, and there's some members of the Sons of Confederate Veterans who want to know how that happened too, and they haven't been told about it yet. Okay, on Monday, we get the announcement there's going to be an emergency meeting. Tuesday, the new president of UNC, Bill Roper, signs the agreement. Wednesday at 10, there's a meeting. Wednesday at 11:11, a lawsuit is filed. At 11:12, the university responds, and at 11:17, Judge Alan Baddour signs the agreement. Everything was done behind closed doors.
Well, I'll tell you what, this thing has raised all kinds of feelings. If the goal here, and by the way, let us say, this ain't an easy issue.
No.
We've had some mighty good people trying to resolve and fix this thing for over a year, so we got to give them some slack there. But I mean, this decision has just raised controversy all over everywhere. The students and the faculty at UNC are just up in arms. They're saying, first of all, why are you giving them $2.5 million? Right. And why are you giving it to them?
I want to know if the lawyer who filed the suit for the Sons of Confederate Veterans gets a 1/3 contingency fee on this incredible legal victory in it.
Spoken like a true lawyer.
Well, the head of the Sons of Confederate Veterans wrote a missive before this all went down, where he was explaining himself to his members, in which he said, we had 0 chance of winning this lawsuit. We knew we'd been told we had a 0% chance. Then you file a lawsuit that it's still legitimate.
Most shockingly of all to me is the full board never had a meeting to vote on this. It's not clear the Board of Governors itself ever voted on it or ever delegated the authority to do this to the committee. This is another incredible embarrassment for the folks who run the first public university system in the United States. And here's the problem, though. The people who elected that board are the members of the General Assembly. These people were elected or handpicked by the Senate leadership and the House leadership who have been silent. What the heck is going on?
Well, we're not going to be silent about asking our panel to tell us something we don't know. Rob Schofield, we got 2 minutes.
All right. Well, this past week, the Trump administration slashed food stamps for 700,000 people across our country. Big impact here in North Carolina. A lot of needy people are going to be going without.
Yeah, a lot of people are going to be affected. We're going to do a
Happy
topic
holidays,
on this next
people.
week.
Looks like Senator Phil Berger wants to be Senate Majority or Senate President Pro Tem again for the 6th time. Not too many years ago, Republicans were complaining about one person holding leadership in North Carolina for too long. This will be 12 years for Phil Berger.
Rick.
Republican judges running for appellate seats are essentially running as a ticket this time around.
Yes.
It's a
Very
big
unique.
risk, big reward.
Yeah,
That's there.
Bob.
Well, with all this talk about Confederate monuments, there is a new North Carolina historical marker being dedicated to General John Gibbon, who was probably the only North Carolinian who was a Union general during the Civil War and was at the Battle of Gettysburg at the wall and the copse of trees opposing his cousin, General Pettigrew.
General John Jacob Pettigrew from Terrell County.
That's right, but the monument's for John Gibbon, Union
How
general.
about that? Well, you've heard our spin on the issues of the day. To stay informed all during the week, sign up for our free weekly email newsletter, give your feedback, and read my weekly column. Visit our website, ncspin.com, or catch NC Spin on Facebook. And while on that website, subscribe to our podcast for radio as well as our YouTube channel. Join us next week for more balanced debate for the Old North State. Until then, stay informed and watch out for the spin.
They're up before dawn and work late into the night. They believe in hard work, family, and doing the right thing. They stand up for their communities when others walk away. They're good people who just want a fair shake. They are farmers. At North Carolina Farm Bureau, we are proud to stand with our farmers.
Today's tools make you a real DIYer, and as a member of an electric cooperative, you have lots of valuable tools to help you do it yourself in controlling your home energy use and budget, leaving you free to be Dad.
Production underwriting provided by the North Carolina Academy of Family Physicians. Family Physicians, your trusted healthcare advisor for life.
North Carolina Channel is made possible by the financial contributions of viewers like you who support the UNC TV network.